My name is Steve Hanna, and I've been working with Java since 1.0. I worked in the university setting for a little over a decade using Java and PHP for mostly enterprise type applications. Then I joined an open source company called Codename One. They were producing a Java solution for mobile app development cross
Mhm.
platform. So they were first to market with like Java for the iPhone as far as like effective making something work. And we actually do use JavaFX for the simulator because it's a huge project that includes like a custom compiler and runtime for iOS, separate runtimes for the different platforms, web, uh, Windows Phone or UWP now, and a JavaFC simulator. So we do use JavaFX for the media and the web components and various things. For the past few years, I've been working at a company called Cloudbeds. That we do like online hotel management and some of the a lot of enterprise Java, and occasionally when I see the opportunity, I actually did pull in some JavaFX to do a UI for a on-premises door locks application, so that
Mhm.
they've got their like door lock system with key cards and stuff, and we needed a system that could install on the client's computers that would allow those systems to interact with Cloudbeds. And I used JavaFX for that. That was just, um, presented it. It wasn't a top-down thing. It was just like, hey, why not do this in JavaFX? And it ended up being a very pleasant experience.
That's actually what happens as a Java developer if you need a UI application and you just want to use the language you know, then you end up with JavaFX and indeed can create something very fast.
I agree. Yeah.
Is that how you ended up creating jDeploy? Because that's the main reason I invited you for this interview. Can you
Yeah, I,
explain what it
I
is
didn't
and
mention
how
it.
it started?
Well, jDeploy is a tool that allows you to deploy a Java desktop application specifically uh, as a native bundle. So, like you, the starting point is supposed to be like how to produce an executable jar file, right? You can do Java dash jar your jar file. Um, the hard part is like giving that to somebody else so they can use it is amazingly hard. Just even if you're sending it to a Java developer, even if somebody sends their jar file to me, it might not work because maybe they wrote it on Java 16, and my default is on Java 17 or Java 11. Um, and in the more common case, you're just sending to somebody that's not a Java developer. You wrote a program you want somebody to use, and they're not going to know what to do with the jar file. It's just not going to work. So what's easier is to send it as like a Mac desktop app or a Windows exe file. But there's complications in that too. It's just crazy complications. You've already worked for I don't know how long to make your application a tool that you're proud of, that you want to share. And now you have to separately on Windows and Mac and Linux figure out how to generate a native bundle that somebody can use. And on Mac, especially, it's even worse. Like there are tools that allow you to do this separately on each platform. I'm talking about jpackage, and it was worse before jpackage. Like jpackage came out, and it actually was
Mhm.
was wonderful compared to what we had before. But it's still like you're using jpackage. You want to produce a Windows application, you have to have Windows and some third-party tools installed to do that. And it's not trivial. Like you got to do some setup of configuration files to make it work the way you want. And on Mac, same thing. You have to do it on a Mac, and it's using the native tooling. And what's even worse on Mac is if you do not sign it and notarize it, they won't be able to open it anyways. Or if they can open it by some fluke, they're going to get a scary warning about how the app is probably a virus, and you better not install it. So that's the context. All I wanted to do was take a little application that I built and send it to a friend. Or what would be a common case in Codename One is the clients were Java developers, and I wanted to build a tool to help them. Like it's a desktop tool. I see they're having a problem. I can whip up a GUI tool to help them do something, and it was harder than it should have been. And so I wanted to be able to take my what I get from any Java IDE, which is the executable jar file, and I want to take that and I want to give it to some in a format that people can install. It wasn't very long before because I achieved that uh, before I got to jDeploy, but it wasn't very long before I ran into the second situation of now I've sent this tool to like all the people. It's like now you can use my tool. It's going to help you out. And a guy sends in a bug, and I realize this affects everybody. Now I gotta redeploy the whole thing. So I sent an email out to everybody, said, make sure you download version 1.1. It's got an important bug fix. And then the first question I got to ask everybody too when they're having problems, like what version are you using, so that I can try to get them up to the latest version. And so the second problem that jDeploy solved was that deployment. Like, yes, now they've got it on here. I generally want to make sure that they're always on the latest version. Although with semantic versioning, maybe you want to make it so they're only on the latest patch version or only on the latest bug fix version, or maybe you just want it on the bleeding edge. Like when I come up with a change, I want to push it out and I want people to use it. And that was the I guess the second important piece that made it, I would say, MVP, minimum viable, those two things. Produce a bundle without the headaches and also be able to deploy updates. And that's at its core what I wanted to achieve. And I'm actually happy with the position right now. At this point, I'm looking at building the frontier on more nice to haves, more features that I guess are required for enterprises.
You said, yeah, I built applications for all platforms. That's also something you can do with GraalVM, like building. But is it a bit the same struggle like with jPackage? You need to do it on each platform for each platform?
Yeah, and even with GraalVM, I've used GraalVM in a couple places. I don't think I've actually done deployments with it. I ended up still using the standard
Hmm.
stuff, partly because the things I was deploying, the startup time just wasn't critical enough to
Mhm.
want to delve into the weeds of this other thing. The standard runtimes were sufficient for me. But yeah, even in that case with GraalVM, I'm pretty sure you still need to do if you're going to build for Windows, you're going to do that on Windows. You're going to build if you build for Mac, you're going to do that on Mac. Um, so nothing wrong with that. And in fact, it's become a lot easier these days to do that with like GitHub Actions. You just have you have a Windows runner, you have a Mac runner, you have a Linux runner. Um, but it's still a hassle. I'd prefer to be able to just build it and have it spit out no matter what platform I'm on. I want it to just spit out all the stuff that I need to send people.
Mhm.
Uh, Having to orchestrate multiple runners is possible, but it's more expensive and in both time and complexity and actual money when it comes to paying for the compute time.
Can you show a few examples of how it works, what it does, some applications that are maybe created or distributed with jDeploy?
Sure. I'll start with just some of the demos I've got on the jDeploy website. This is jdeploy.com. Go to a few samples I've got here. SnapCharts is this is a Java application made by a friend of mine who created his own UI toolkit that he calls SnapKit, I think. And so he's got an application called SnapCharts that's for making like 3D graphs and charts. So I'm going to install the jDeploy installer. Open her up. Okay, so he hasn't done a custom splash screen for the installer. So it just gets the default. I'll hit proceed. Okay, same. And so here's his application. So show some samples. It keeps on opening up in the other window. Okay, so he's got some 3D charts here that you can sort of play with. That's his, Um, so yeah, so that's an application that he deployed using jDeploy. He would have started out just with his executable jar file, and then he sets up with jDeploy uh, a package.json file, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but that is it's an NPM. It's used by Node.js. That scares some people away from it. The fact that the first that it uses NPM to deploy the applications, but this is just one place that it can deploy. It can also deploy through GitHub and it doesn't require NPM at all. In fact, I'm working on a new GUI tool that is complete install. There's no dependencies. You don't need anything else to do the deployment. The install process is very similar on Windows and Linux. You can see I've got a couple of different formats. There's Debian, the .deb files, and the bin. This is one of the areas where I do want to add more because you'll see on Windows I've got the Intel installers for 64-bit, but I don't have all the different flavors. Like I don't have 32-bit right now, and I don't have the ARM right now. Same with Linux right now. I've got Intel, but not ARM. I do want to add those as I find time.
So how this actually works is that jDeploy makes sure that the right Java runtime is on the system for the application.
Yeah. So what jDeploy does, it's got a launcher, like a native launcher that I wrote. I used Golang to write the launcher, and it starts out by checking to see if the Java runtime environment or a compatible Java runtime environment has already been installed. It manages its own inside a special jDeploy directory in the home directory. If it's already installed, we're good. Then it will check to see if there's any updates required for the application itself. And if so, it'll download those. Once those are in place, it'll start up. And it's got like a splash screen with a progress built in to make the experience seem nice. So it's not just hanging if it does have to download the JRE. And you can even when you do an update of your app, you can specify specify that now it requires Java 21. Maybe before it, in your previous version, you bundled Java 17. All you do is in jDeploy, you would specify that it's Java 21 version now. So the next time the app starts up, it'll say, it requires Java 21. Download either a runtime. You can even say it requires the full JDK, and it uses right now. It's using the Azul APIs to download the runtimes and the JDK from there. For the older ones, I'm using the adopt OpenJDK. When you're publishing a new version, you're publishing. It's just like publishing a new library. If you're publishing a library on NPM, same sort of thing, but it's publishing your jar file, and then the launcher just knows to be able to check the metadata for that and see what the latest is. And it also knows what the user's update settings have been, whether it wants to always update to the latest or if it's good with just patch updates, and it'll download whatever it needs, and then you're good.
I have to confirm that it indeed works splendidly. I have it for a pet project, and indeed, whenever I push code to GitHub, I start building it. I have a new jar file. jDeploy takes care of it, and as soon as I start it, within minutes on another computer, if I restart the application, I have the new version running there. So it's really smooth. And I really love it that jDeploy just takes care of this. I have it on GitHub Actions, the building that happens there, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. As soon as you need to set it up one time and off you go. Eh?
That's actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because you're using GitHub Actions, and you're actually not even using NPM
No.
for Melody Matrix. You're using GitHub releases, which
Hmm.
was something that at the very beginning I built it for NPM because it seemed like a very logical way to go. This was before I had any CI/CD built in, no GitHub Actions. Next, I built a GitHub Action to be able to publish to NPM as part of the action. So
Hmm.
whenever you do a new commit, it'll do that. But then it was only logical. Once you've got your application building with GitHub Actions, you start to think, well, why do I need NPM anymore? Why don't I just
Hmm.
publish to the GitHub release? And so that was the next step, because no matter how easy it is to build this stuff locally, one day you're going to be using a different computer, and you're not going to remember what you needed to have set up on your computer for it to work. Like, it'll just be like, oh, it was set up. Did I need a third party tool? Can't remember. Maybe it was Java 17. Can't remember. But if it's with the GitHub Actions, you just push it, push your changes, and your new
Hmm.
application will be ready to download.
I also love the approach that you can select in the installer. I want to have the latest, which is just the develop branch, let's say, or I want to stick to releases.
There's two different types of sort of, what would you call them, flows, uh, channels, you could say. Now, we can have an application that is synced to a particular branch in your repo. And so in that case, say I've got my application that I'm distributing out to all my users, it is synced to just my develop branch or my main branch or maybe my stage branch. You can have it, every branch has its own release. In which case, all you need to do to distribute your changes is make a commit, push it to GitHub, and it'll do all the CI/CD stuff, and it'll push out a new release. The next time the user who has that version of your app installed, it'll get the changes from GitHub. And then there's the release version, which is like on GitHub, you're going create new release version 1.0.1 or something like that. In which case, that will be only synced to other release versions. So if you've got an app that was created for that version 1.0.1 and you're distributing that to people, then you can make all the changes you want on your main branch, your develop branch, your staging branch. Those people aren't getting those. People that have your release branch, they're only getting changes that are in your next release. When you release 1.0.2, the people who installed the 1.0.1, well, they'll get the 1.0.2 as long as they've got auto updates turned on.
Mhm. On your blog, you recently published a full explanation on how you can distribute an app as a self-signed DMG for Mac OS. What's so special about this type of distribution?
It's special because I don't know if you noticed, when I installed it before, it uses an installer that, you double click it, it opens up, and it gives you those options, which is fine. I think it's a good user experience. But there's a lot of Mac users who are used to the old DMG file, which is like you double click the DMG, it opens up to a window of this disk image, and then they drag the app onto their application directory. And that's just more familiar to people. The other side of things is, with the Mac world, uh, if you want to distribute applications, uh, you need to have an Apple developer account, and then you get certificates that allow you to sign your application
Mhm.
to certify that it's associated with you. Uh, with the standard jDeploy installer, you don't need that. It gets around that because the installer itself is signed by jDeploy's uh,
certificate.
developer
Or,
account,
yeah, yeah.
jDeploy certificate. And that's why there's that extra little pop-up that comes up in the installer saying, hey, this application was built by this developer. This is the website. So only install it if you trust it. Because the installer itself is actually not running your app yet. It is only running code that is written by, well, me mostly, jDeploy. And so if you want to do any sort of distribution a different way, like with a DMG, for example, you got to sign it yourself. And to sign it yourself, you need to have that Apple developer account, whatever it is, $100 a year. I can't remember. And you need to download the certificates. You need to set up the workflow. It's every time I do it, I hate it. Every time I set up a the, the signing thing, but it's doable. And now I've recently added this feature in jDeploy so that if you do want to distribute your application as a DMG file, you can do it. There's just some steps I laid out in a blog post. You have to add some repository secrets with like your this is on GitHub, so it's in your private secrets. You have to put your certificate, put in some credentials, the Apple password and stuff, and then it will generate the DMG file and put it into the GitHub release download pretty seamlessly, so that it'll just like normally on the GitHub release, it'll have links to download all the different platforms. And now the ones for Mac, instead of downloading the regular one, they'll download the DMG that you generated. And that part was mostly done just with using a custom GitHub action. It just, after it's generated all the jDeploy stuff, it then does a second pass. That I do it as a second pass because the default jDeploy runs on a Linux box, usually by default, because that's the cheapest. You're only going to use a Mac
If you really
runner
need it.
if you have to.
Yeah.
And so the DMG part has to run on Mac. So like it's set up, and I've got boilerplate templates to set this up. There's an IntelliJ plugin that actually sets up Bootstrap projects with all the GitHub Actions built in, so that like from the minute it's created, it's generating your native applications, and it includes all the stuff for DMG. You just need to add a couple variables to your repository and secrets, and it will start producing DMG files for you.
And this solves one of the critiques I read about jDeploy was, actually you install it on a Mac with a certificate of jDeploy. If it ever gets abused, that certificate, all those applications would get blocked. And now, by using your own certificate and that DMG, you as the owner and creator of the application becomes the responsible. And that's what you said. You don't need that extra pop-up anymore.
I suppose. I mean, obviously, I'm hoping that I don't run into any trouble there. That's partly why I'm taking precautions to make sure that there is that extra step. It's not running malware. Before it installs any application, it's going to pop up with that dialog that will show that the users can follow to the actual source of who made this software. Some of the work that I'm doing right now, because I am conscious of this being I guess a weakness. I've spent a significant amount of time the last 6 months working on, I guess, certificate pinning. It would be the way to put it, so that you can, like with Apple aside, you can sign everything end to end with your own certificates that you generate, your like self-signed certificates, and the installer or the launcher itself can be, I guess, pinned to your certificate so that it will fail to run if at any point in the chain it has been tampered with. So that's something right now. It's not live. I haven't put it out yet because going back to what I said before about some of these changes end up being big
Mhm.
to get to minimal place. That's one of
That's one
them.
of them. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and security is a very difficult and hard topic. That's for sure. Is it something more you want to show or share?
One thing I whipped up just in the spirit of creating simple tools that you can deploy very easily. I got ChatGPT to write a tool that would show a Docker log. When you want to see the Docker logs, it's all in JSON, uh, and sometimes it can be hard to
Mhm.
sort of parse. I'm sure people have tools for this already, but I just couldn't find one at the moment. So I went on ChatGPT and said, make a Java application. Basically, this is what I said: make a Java application that will accept a Docker log from standard input and will display the results in a J split pane with a JTable on top and a text area at the bottom where the text area shows the JSON prettified. And it only took, like, I deployed it with jDeploy. It took me about 20 minutes from, and it's all deployed on NPM. It's installable. That one I did as a command line tool because jDeploy also will deploy command line tools. This is not a pretty app, but I call it the Docker log viewer, written in Swing, basically by Chat GPT. And so the idea is, uh, I wanted to see my Docker logs. So you do like Docker compose logs -f, and I want to pipe it into something, and I want to show it in a GUI format. And so it just shows each line, and it'll continue to get them from as standard input. And I can just click on each line, and it'll do the JSON prettify. This is the source of the application. So I just created a basic Maven project. The application is this long, just a single class Docker log viewer. I mostly did this with Chat GPT, just asked it to create an application that will read in logs from a standard input and will display them in a JTable. And when you click on the JTable, it should display the prettified JSON in a text area in the bottom. And so this is my project. And so for the jDeploy portion, I've got jDeploy installed as just a command line tool. This is what the tool looks like. I've got a name for it, the version that I increment, and this versioning stuff and this publish button are set up right now to work with NPM. So this one I actually didn't dial in for the GitHub Actions yet, and so I said, okay, let's do Java 21. I tell it where the jar file is. I could select an icon for deploying this as a desktop app. This particular one, I am not. I just deployed it as a command line application, but then I specify what I want the command to be called. Um, for the desktop, I'll show it while I'm in here, but you can specify extensions and MIME types that you want the application to open. You can also set up the splash screens that are displayed when the app is opening, and you can select an icon. And in this case, I didn't do any of that. You can also say that it requires a full JDK or requires JavaFX. So if you're using JavaFX in your application, what this checkbox does is it makes it so that it's going to use the Azul Azul with JavaFX or the
Mhm.
ZuluFX
Solufics, yeah,
distributions,
yeah.
so that it's got that all built in. But to show how I fire this up, oftentimes I find myself doing this. Docker compose logs, and I'm reading it like that. And so
Very
in this
useful.
case, because I've installed it with jDeploy, I can do Docker log viewer swing is what I called it. And but yeah, it just opens like that. And yeah, so this, I'm sure somebody's going to tell me, oh, just use, whatever this, proper tool is for that. But I didn't know. So I didn't have a tool at hand. And so this took me 20 minutes to chat GPT, put it in there, deploy. And now I've got this little command line tool that I can use on any computer that I'm on. Just the installation was just because I published this one through NPM. So the installation was just NPM install Docker log viewer swing. And you can actually do that from your computer if you've got NPM installed, and it'll just install it as a command line tool in that case.
Which is, again, a very nice demonstration of if you know your tools, if you're a good Java developer, you can use Swing or JavaFX, whatever, to build a UI, and you know that the jDeploy is there. It's just a matter of gluing everything together, and you have a new running app in a very short time.
The Java ecosystem is really the reason all this can work. It's just amazing, all the tools that we have to build a GUI like that. It's all built in at your fingertips.